Welcome back to UBG Bytes. This is part one of a three-part series about one of the most consequential cybersecurity incidents in modern history, the 2015 breach of Italian surveillance company Hacking Team. Fair warning, this episode requires coffee, because we're diving into how two Italian hackers built a multi-million-dollar empire selling digital surveillance tools to some of the worst governments. And before you ask, yes, this story gets darker before it gets better. This series draws from extensive research into the 400 gigabytes of leaked internal documents, court filings, and investigative journalism that followed the breach. If you want to understand how the commercial surveillance industry really works and how a single motivated hacker can bring it all crashing down, this is the story that explains everything. But first, we need to understand what they built and why it made them such an irresistible target. From basement hackers to surveillance moguls. Let's start in 2003 with David Vincenzetti, a self-taught hacker who'd been seduced by cryptography since age 14. Picture this, a guy working in a windowless basement who transforms himself into a multi-millionaire mogul wearing expensive suits and eating designer steaks. That transformation tells you everything about how lucrative the surveillance business became. Vincenzetti partnered with Valeriano Badeschi to create what would become the world's most notorious commercial spyware company. But here's the key detail. Their technical foundation came from legitimate security researchers. Italian programmers Alberto Onaghi and Marco Valeri had created a legitimate network security tool called EtherCap in 2001. The pivotal moment came when Milan police approached these researchers with a simple request. Extend your network monitoring capabilities to record Skype calls. This wasn't about building malware. It was about solving a real law enforcement problem. Former developer Alberto Pelliccioni recalled, "This was supposed to be used against terrorists and criminals. It was very exciting to be part of this." That's how most surveillance companies start. Legitimate security research, genuine law enforcement needs, and smart people who think they're helping catch the bad guys. By 2015, Hacking Team's flagship product, the remote control system, codenamed Galileo and Da Vinci, represented the pinnacle of commercial surveillance technology. This wasn't your typical malware. This was a sophisticated, distributed architecture that revolutionized how governments could spy on their citizens. Think about how most malware works. Simple command and control servers that security researchers can easily track and take down. RCS was completely different. It used separate components, master databases storing evidence, collector nodes interfacing with anonymizing networks, front-end systems receiving connections from infected devices, and back-end processors handling encrypted data. The technical specifications were staggering. Multi-platform support across Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, BlackBerry, and Symbian. Scalability to monitor hundreds of thousands of targets simultaneously. AES encrypted communications disguised as legitimate HTTP traffic. Installation methods ranging from zero-day exploits to social engineering campaigns to physical USB device infections. But here's what made it really dangerous: the surveillance capabilities. Comprehensive keystroke capture, remote activation of cameras and microphones without user awareness, interception of all communications, including encrypted Skype calls, and extraction of files, cryptocurrency wallets, and browser data. It could even analyze behavioral patterns, like how you typed your password. Hacking Team maintained a guaranteed inventory of at least 3 zero-day exploits at all times. Internal communications showed they paid $30,000 to $45,000 each for flash exploits, sourced through brokers with ties to French exploit provider ViewPen Security. When you're guaranteeing law enforcement customers that your software will work against any target, you need that kind of firepower. By 2015, Hacking Team had 70 active clients spanning 6 continents. Their customer list read like a catalog of global law enforcement and intelligence agencies, and that's where the story gets uncomfortable. Sure, they sold to legitimate customers, FBI, DEA, European law enforcement agencies, but they also sold to some truly awful governments. Sudan paid 960,000 euros in 2012 despite UN arms embargoes. Ethiopia spent $1 million for software they used to target diaspora journalists. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Russia, countries with well-documented histories of human rights abuses. The pricing model was sophisticated: high upfront license fees, ongoing maintenance contracts, and premium charges for custom development. Sudan paid 960,000 euros, Ethiopia $1 million, and a New York district attorney proposal was $760,000 up front, plus $382,000 for services and maintenance. This wasn't cheap software, it was enterprise-grade surveillance infrastructure. But here's the really insidious part: the subscription model. Customers didn't just buy the software and walk away. They needed regular updates to avoid countermeasures, creating dependency relationships that maximized recurring revenue. Hacking Team retained significant control through remote kill switches and mandatory updates. Internal documents revealed ethically questionable practices that prioritize profits over human rights. They used UAE-based middlemen to circumvent restrictions, maintained not officially supported clients, and in 2013, Vincenzetti even negotiated selling a majority stake to Saudi Arabia to bypass Italian export controls entirely. What made Hacking Team particularly dangerous wasn't just their technology, it was their culture. Leaked documents revealed a paranoid, cult-like corporate environment that Vincenzetti ruled with an iron fist. Vincenzetti's worldview was militantly pro-surveillance. He called Julian Assange a criminal who by all means should be arrested, described Chelsea Manning as another lunatic, and believed Edward Snowden should go to jail, absolutely. He often signed emails with the fascist motto, Boya ki mola, death to those who give up. The company operated like a surveillance state itself. Vincenzetti hired private investigators to stalk former employees. As former employee Guido Landi put it, as soon as you resigned, you became the enemy. When the lead Android developer Alberto Pelliccioni left in 2014 for ethical reasons, he was sued and investigated as a potential insider threat. He complained, "Hacking Team shouldn't be a fucking religion that if you want to leave, you're an infidel or a traitor." This wasn't just bad management. It was a fundamental misunderstanding of how technology companies should operate. When your corporate culture is more paranoid than the intelligence agencies you sell to, you've created an environment ripe for internal threats and operational security failures. Understanding Hacking Team's rise helps explain why they became such an irresistible target for hacktivists. This wasn't just another tech company. They were actively enabling human rights abuses while hiding behind claims of supporting law enforcement. Their technology was being used to spy on journalists, activists, and dissidents worldwide. The technical sophistication made them attractive target, too. This wasn't script kiddie malware. This was enterprise-grade surveillance infrastructure used by governments worldwide. Taking down Hacking Team would strike a blow to the entire commercial surveillance industry. But perhaps most importantly, their operational security was terrible, despite their technical capabilities. The same paranoid culture that made them effective at building surveillance tools made them vulnerable to internal threats and social engineering attacks. By July 2015, Hacking Team was at the peak of their power. Revenues exceeding 40 million euros annually, 70 clients across 35 countries, and technology that governments craved. Vincenzetti was worth millions and commanded a surveillance empire that influenced global politics. They had built the perfect surveillance company: sophisticated technology, paying customers worldwide, and a business model that generated recurring revenue. What they hadn't built was adequate security for their own operations. The company that specialized in infiltrating other people's systems was about to learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end. Their paranoid corporate culture, ethical blindness, and operational security failures were about to collide with a motivated hacktivist who had been watching them for months. That's where our story gets really interesting. Next time on UBG Bytes, we're diving into one of the most technically brilliant and strategically devastating hacks in cybersecurity history. We'll explore how a mysterious anarchist called Phineas Fisher spent 100 hours over 6 weeks methodically dismantling a multi-million-dollar surveillance empire, and why no one at Hacking Team saw it coming. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, in cybersecurity, the same technical capabilities that make you powerful can make you a target when you're not using them responsibly.